The Young and the Restless, Tuesday, November 4 recap. Noah's memory issues. Claire meets Mitch and gets bad vibes. The Young and the Restless episode for Tuesday, November 4, 2025, delivered a mix of heartache, mystery, and emotional tension that had viewers glued to their screens. It was one of those days in Genoa City where every glance, every secret, and every unspoken truth seemed to carry the weight of something bigger brewing beneath the surface. Morning at the hotel. Sleepless nights and lingering worries. The day began quietly at the hotel, where Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, knocked gently on Sharon Newman's door, a warm scone in hand. The gesture was small, but the meaning behind it was powerful. Both of them had spent a sleepless night, haunted by Matt Clark's return under his new alias Mitch Bacall, Roger Howarth, and the lingering uncertainty surrounding their son, Noah Newman, Lucas Adams. As Sharon opened the door, Nick could see the exhaustion written across her face. The two shared a quiet moment over coffee and breakfast, reflecting on how strange it felt to have Matt, or Mitch, back in their orbit after all these years. Sharon admitted she couldn't shake the feeling that Matt's sudden reappearance wasn't just a coincidence. It felt orchestrated, deliberate, as if he was back to settle unfinished business. Nick, ever the protective father, made it clear he wasn't going to sit back and wait for answers to come to them. Sharon mentioned she needed to return to the hospital to check on Noah, who was still unconscious after the horrific crash. But Nick had other plans. He wanted to go to the Shadow Room, the sleek, enigmatic nightclub connected to both Mitch Bacall and Sienna Bacall, Tamara Braun. Nick was determined to catch Mitch off guard, maybe even confront him face to face. The tension between concern for their son and fear of what Mitch might be hiding set the stage for what would become a day full of revelations and reckoning. Claire's morning hangover, confessions, and goodbyes. Downstairs at the hotel cafe, the tone was lighter, at least at first. Claire Newman, Haley Aaron, sat at a corner table, hiding behind oversized sunglasses, trying to combat the pounding headache from the night before. Across from her sat her mother, Victoria Newman, Amelia Heinley, and grandmother, Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott. The three generations of Newman women shared breakfast, but beneath the polite chatter, there was an undercurrent of tension. Nikki, ever observant, couldn't help but show a bit of disapproval when she realized Claire was nursing a hangover. It wasn't judgment, more like concern. Claire had been through so much recently, the revelations about her past, her complicated connection to Jordan, and now her whirlwind trip that seemed to bring more confusion than clarity. Nikki's maternal instincts were in full gear. As they ate, Victoria gently brought up the topic of returning home. Claire admitted she planned to head back to Genoa City later that day. She said it was time to figure out what normal looks like, though she didn't sound entirely sure what that meant anymore. Across the room, Holden Novak, Nathan Owens, overheard her words. He quickly made his way over, asking if they could talk privately. Victoria gave her daughter an encouraging nod, and Claire stepped aside with Holden. Holden and Claire, one last heart-to-heart. Outside on the hotel patio, the two had a candid, emotional conversation. Holden, clearly smitten and a bit confused, wanted to know what their night together meant. He asked point blank, "Where do I fit in your life now?" Claire hesitated. She admitted she enjoyed her time with him, every part of it, but she wasn't sure how it all fit into her reality. She needed space, time, and maybe even distance to sort through her emotions. Holden tried to mask his disappointment, but the sadness in his eyes said it all. Before she left, Claire had two requests. She wanted to see the mountains one last time to clear her head and take in the peace she so desperately needed. And she wanted to stop by the Shadow Room to thank Sienna Bacall for her hospitality. Holden, realizing this wasn't just a simple farewell tour, raised an eyebrow. "You're not really going there to say thank you, are you?" Claire smiled faintly. "Maybe not entirely," she admitted. Holden suspected this was about finding answers, about digging into the tangled past involving him and Audra Charles, Zuleika Silver. Despite his reservations, Holden agreed to take her. At the mountains, moments of reflection. Later, in the crisp mountain air, Claire and Holden stood side by side, snapping photos of the breathtaking scenery. It was a moment of calm in an otherwise chaotic stretch of days. Claire inhaled deeply, as if she could cleanse herself of all the secrets and lies that had followed her since arriving in Los Angeles. Holden tried to keep the moment light, joking about how she'd have to come back someday. But the silence that followed told him she wasn't ready to make promises. They both knew something bigger was looming, a truth that couldn't stay buried forever. At the shadow room. Old faces, new lies. By afternoon, they arrived at the shadow room, a place pulsing with energy and tension in equal measure. Outside the club, Holden tried to press Claire out of pressing Sienna for details about his past with Audra Charles. He warned her that nothing good could come from reopening old wounds. Claire nodded, but her determination was clear. She needed answers, even if they hurt. Meanwhile, inside the club, Mitch Bacall was already there, confronting Sienna about the fallout from the previous night. He was visibly frustrated, his calm facade slipping. Mitch denied once again that he was Matt Clark, dismissing the accusation as nonsense cooked up by a desperate Nick Newman looking for someone to blame. But Sienna wasn't entirely convinced. She had seen too much and heard too much to ignore the whispers. When Mitch asked her why she hadn't come home the night before, Sienna dodged, claiming she had to handle club business. The tension between them was palpable, a mix of professional partnership and unspoken strain. Just as the air grew thick with tension, Claire and Holden entered the room. Sienna greeted Claire warmly, surprised to see her back. Claire explained she just wanted to thank her before leaving town. Sienna seemed genuinely touched. Until Mitch appeared from behind the bar. The moment Mitch laid eyes on Claire, something changed. He smiled, offering his hand, and said Sienna had mentioned that she was Noah Newman's cousin. That alone made Claire uneasy. The way he looked at her, the subtle flicker in his expression, it was enough to send a chill down her spine. Mitch began talking about meeting Noah in London, about how he'd offered to invest in Noah's new LA club. The words were casual, but his tone was rehearsed, almost too perfect. Sienna interjected, mentioning that there had been talk that Noah's accident might not have been an accident. Mitch's face tightened instantly. "Let's not spread rumors," he said sharply, his calm demeanor cracking for a split second. Holden watched the exchange closely, his instincts on high alert. Sienna, realizing she may have said too much, tried to brush it off, but the damage was done. The tension in the room was unmistakable. The Audra factor. Truths left untold. Eventually, the conversation shifted to Audra Charles, and Holden was forced to address the elephant in the room. He downplayed their past, calling it ancient history, but admitted he still ran into her occasionally in Genoa City. That didn't sit well with Claire, who had heard enough stories to know that Audra rarely left a situation without chaos. Sienna, catching the curiosity in Claire's expression, smirked. "Looking for Audra dirt, like Kyle Abbott was?" she teased. Claire quickly shook her head. "No, I'm just looking for honesty," she replied softly. As she and Holden stepped outside the club, Claire admitted something that would linger long after the day ended. "When Mitch walked into that room, something in me shifted. There's something off about him. I can feel it." Holden looked uneasy, but said nothing. Deep down, he probably felt it too. Nick's arrival. The confrontation builds. Moments later, Nick appeared outside the shadow room, tension written all over his face. He told Claire he needed to find Mitch immediately, that this was about Noah's crash. Claire and Holden exchanged uneasy glances, but confirmed Mitch was still inside. Curious and slightly suspicious, Claire asked why Sharon had also been at the shadow room the night before. Nick hesitated, but brushed it off. "It's complicated, but right now my focus is on finding out what really happened to my son." Inside, the atmosphere turned stormy. Mitch cornered Sienna again, furious that she mentioned anything about the accident. "You shouldn't have told Claire that," he hissed. But Sienna stood her ground. She already knew, and maybe it's time the truth came out. Mitch's eyes darkened. "You're getting too involved," he warned. "This isn't your problem." But Sienna's trembling hands betrayed her fear. and her guilt. When Mitch accused her of caring too much about Noah for someone who barely knew him, she couldn't even respond. The look on her face said it all. There was more she wasn't telling him.